Hey everybody, how you guys doing? Welcome to episode 13 of the Real Estate Talk. I'm Abel Menser.
I'm Burhan Khan.
What's up, Brian?
Doing well, Abel. How about you?
We got the election out the way.
Yep.
Change of seasons. Everything's about to go into the holiday season. We're getting prepared for January.
Yep. It's a new color change. As we all know, it's the fall.
Yeah.
But this time of year, it's November entering December.
Exactly.
A lot of people tend to go on vacation this time of year.
That's true, especially in our field. The things kind of start to slow down.
Yep.
So then this is a great time to spend with family, to spend with your
Loved
significant
ones.
others and all that. Are you ready for that? Do you got some plans going?
Well, we're thinking about going on a cruise or something like that.
Yeah.
We have family coming over for Thanksgiving. But that's why this time of year, business tends to slow down a lot.
Yeah.
It's almost like everyone in the country tends to go into hibernation mode.
Yeah, you can
In a
say
way.
that. Yeah. Or just I tell people this is a great time if you're looking to buy a home while everybody else is not focused on that.
Yeah,
you can go ahead and put yourself in the market, and the seller might be a little bit more motivated to start buying to start selling their home.
Exactly. And this time of year, even though a lot of buyers get on the sideline because they're just not in the mood to buy,
Yeah.
investors come and they hop into the field. Because if you list your home right now, what tends to happen is there are less buyers out there and there are more investors because investors are hungry in the winter because they know if they find a deal, especially for a house they can flip, they're going to buy it and then start fixing it right now because typically it takes about 2 to 3 months to fix a house, right?
Yeah.
And then by the time they're done fixing it, guess what? We're going to enter the new season.
The new season.
Which is typically starts around February, tax season. And then everyone files their taxes, gets a huge tax return, and they use that as a down payment to buy
their home.
Exactly.
Actually, Realtor.com stated that October, which was last month, was the most houses got on the market in the last 5 years. And the
Really?
most houses also have stayed on the market longer than they have. So it kind of correlates. Like we have an influx of houses that are coming back on the market, and then we have houses that are staying on the market longer because of what we just talked about. It's December, people are Thanksgiving, Christmas, the New Year. People are not thinking about buying. But for the person that's been looking for a while, this might be the time to find an interesting deal or something that's for the seller. He's like, I need to sell this house like now. So he might be willing to take less than what he asked for.
Exactly. And all the time, people ask me, buyers especially, they want something known as instant equity. And this is a great way to get instant equity. Let's say you buy your house and then you need, a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit.
Yeah.
To use that money for your kids' college funds, or you want to use that money for a big expense like a vacation or a wedding or whatever the case may be, you can get that instant equity if you buy a house right now, especially if that house needs some repairs like new flooring or the kitchen needs renovation or the bathrooms.
Yeah.
You can get a deal. And then after that, do some fixing.
Yeah,
and then move in and then contact your bank and say, hey, I need a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit.
Yeah.
Then after that, believe it or not, you got a great deal.
Exactly. So let's talk about right now, if someone is kind of thinking or is on the fence about putting their home on the market, they're like, you know what, I'm kind of feeling like I'm ready to sell. I feel like the market's going to start trending. What are some things that we can talk about as far as getting ready to sell your home as a seller?
That's a great question, Abel. Sellers, they always have to do some research on their house and see what's a good price they want to sell it at. And let's say you don't have a loan on your house. A lot of baby boomers, especially right now, they use their house as a retirement egg, right? Let's say they bought their house in the 80s or the 90s. And a lot of baby boomers bought real estate in Northern Virginia for like $100,000.
Yeah.
Right now it's well worth over $500,000, 600, 700,000.
Yeah.
And they don't have a loan on it. So if you just want to get rid of it, dump it, you can talk to investors, but I would strongly recommend you talk to a realtor. And we can help you assess what the true value of your house is. And we'll set up an appointment and tell you, just by doing some minor cosmetics, you can sell it for much more than your ideal price, especially in this market.
So the first step for people that are thinking about selling their home right now is to align themselves with a good agent that's going to help them and walk them through the process and essentially kind of give them a fair market value. Like, hey, I think the home will be worth this much. We should do this, do that. So like you also said, like, what are some things that they need to do before they start to sell? So the first step is getting an agent.
Correct.
And then the next step you said is kind of doing little minor things. So the two biggest aspects of the house that make the value go up are the kitchen and the bathroom, right?
Correct. And when as a seller, when you get an agent, the realtor will do something known as a BPO. It's called a broker's price opinion. That's another way of doing an appraisal. It's not officially an appraisal, which is what the bank needs before they give out the loan.
Yeah.
But as agents, we look at comparables.
Yeah.
Similar properties that sold in the market over the past 60 to 90 days. And then we let the seller know this is how much your house is worth. Now, also, we do a little more than that. We go detailed into the broker's price opinion.
Yeah.
And let's say your house needs new flooring and your house needs a new kitchen and the bathrooms need a little updating.
Yeah.
Then we'll calculate exactly how much it'll cost to replace the toilet, exactly how much it'll cost to replace a vanity. If you want a new oven, you need a new faucet, you want brand new granite quartz countertops. We calculate all of that into the BPO. And that's only if you're looking to sell it at the maximum fair market value. Then we do all the calculations there. But again, going back to the baby boomer example, let's say you're thinking, okay, I don't have a loan on the property. I'm just trying to move out of state. I want to move to Florida and retire. I already have my house ready over there.
Yeah.
Then you see a lot of properties that are listed at a low value, right, compared to the fair market value.
Yeah, exactly.
So they might just list it, much lower and say, hey, I just want to
be done with it or get it out. I'm making money anyway. But I also feel like if you're going to put your house on the market, you want to get the maximum value for it. And that's just the safest way, right?
And believe it or not, Abel, a lot of times sellers, they're shocked because us as realtors, we help them get much more than they expected.
Yeah.
And sellers, especially baby boomers, they have it in their mind that they go sometimes online to Zillow or Realtor.com or these other websites. And they're not always 100% accurate.
Because they don't know what updates you've done to the house.
Exactly.
They don't know if you added an extra bedroom, if you added a bathroom, if you updated. They're just going off of what's the value around that house for things that have sold. So
exactly. And the other problem is if the house does not have any transactions over the past 40 years, it's not going to give you a fair market assessment. It just goes by nearby properties
that sold, yeah.
Exactly. And it's not 100%. For example, if it's a townhouse and you don't have a basement, it might say, oh, you do have a basement, or vice versa. Let's say you have a 3-level townhouse and similar properties in the neighborhood don't have the basement. It's going to give you an incorrect assessment based on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, all those websites.
Yeah. I honestly personally recommend for people to do 3 things if they're selling their home, right? 1, go ahead and get an appraisal, right? Get it appraised. It's going to cost you maybe $300-$400. If you're tight on money, I know that can be an issue, but if you've had your house for a while, go get an appraisal and see what you can get for this house, right? What are they going to appraise it for? 1, you're going to know, okay, I can list it at this. And then the second thing would be go ahead and get the home inspection. Go get I know this happens on the buyer side usually, right? But as a seller, you can go and be proactive and get that appraisal, get that home inspection. So now when you get your home inspection, you know exactly what you're going to be looking out for, right? So it's like if they discover some things that are going to arise when you go ahead and get your home under contract, and the buyer goes and gets a home inspection, if you did those things already, it's going to minimize and you're going to get the maximum for your home, right? So I recommend that. Get that home inspection, get that appraisal, and then the third thing, go ahead and do some things that are going to improve the house. Be proactive on that. So focus on the bathroom and the kitchen. A paint job goes a long way. So those things are some things that I say, hey, as a agent, I would advise my client, let's do these things. And then from there, it's going to be up to them. Some people might give pushback and be like, you know what, I know what my house is going to be worth. I don't need an inspection. I do this every time. That's their prerogative, but we want to be able to get the maximum amount that you're able to get. So let's do these things so we're ahead of the curve.
There's one more thing I would recommend, Abel.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 things are great. But if you're trying to get the maximum market value of your house, I would also get a staging company.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple staging companies we can recommend. But staging your house, staging your property, it goes a long way, because by getting the furniture in there, let's say your house is vacant, right? You moved out, you already moved out of state to New York, Texas, Florida, wherever the case may be. And then your house is vacant, right? You just clean out the property. It's stupendous. It's really great. It's a super property. But by having it vacant, it's not going to show as great as it could be if it was staged.
Exactly.
So just by, spending a couple $1,000s and getting it staged by a great staging company, buyers will come in and they'll pay a lot more than you would expect.
Because it's just like when you meet somebody for the first time, right? So your first impressions go a long way.
Correct.
So when someone comes into your home, you want to be able to give them that feeling of how it could look if you furnish it right.
Exactly.
Now, that works great if it's vacant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're currently living in it and waiting for somebody to buy it before you start moving out, then I recommend, hey, you can even still bring in a interior decorator and have them decorate it to a sense where it can still look appealing, right?
Exactly.
I've gone into homes and the house may be great, but the way it's set up or the way the family has it, my clients have walked right out because it didn't give them that feel of how my house can look. It gave them that feel of, oh, I don't want this house to look like this.
And,
right?
I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I've taken buyers and staged properties, right? And I'll tell them up front, this house is staged, right? They don't live here.
Yeah.
And I just do a couple things. I open the kitchen cabinets. If you see it full of utensils, spoons, knives, forks, and you open the closets, if you see it full of clothes, you can tell it's not staged.
Yeah.
But if they're empty, then you can tell, okay, a staging company put all these sofas here, a staging company put the beds.
Yeah.
But you know what? The buyer still actually cares.
Exactly.
Because then in their mind, psychologically, they're thinking, this is what my house is going to look like.
Exactly.
So whether or not you're in denial, okay, this is staged, the buyer, it makes a difference in their decision making.
Yeah.
Because when the property is empty, then it's basically like bones. And you brought up a great example. It's the first impression.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. So that gets us into when you first drive up into the house, right? So you have that curb appeal. If you got weeds on the grass and you haven't cut the grass in 2 months and your flowers are dead and things like that. Just like when you meet somebody, the first thing that you see is how you're going to present that house, right? So when someone drives up to the house, you want them to look at it and be like, okay, I can see myself living there. They call it curb appeal, right?
Correct. And that's huge. You want to make sure you get someone that's good at landscaping to take care of the front yard, take care of the backyard, and the deck if you have one. Because let's say you do a great job on the inside and you even get a staging company, but the exterior of the house is very, very poorly managed. It's not worth it. You got to do a great job on the curb appeal, the landscaping.
So a lot of people that are in HOAs, their curb appeal, their standards that they have to keep up. So that's one thing to look at when you're buying a home as well too. And I know we're talking about sellers, but for buyers, those are kind of like the benefits of being in an HOA. So when a seller is going to sell their home, they've already got curb appeal because there's standards that HOA demands of you to be in that community.
Correct.
So,
I recently had a seller that was selling his house, and they had to get the HOA resale docs, right? Mm-hmm. And the HOA said, oh, you have to power wash the sidewalk. You have to fix the fence. The shed is a little messed up. And you have to plant these new seeds. They had this list.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get upset, oh, why is the HOA making us do this? Well, they're making you do it because if they didn't, then every house in the whole neighborhood would be messed up, and they're pretty much setting a standard.
There's a standard that you have to keep up.
Exactly, and it goes back to what you mentioned about curb appeal. By having great curb appeal, the whole neighborhood, the values continuously raise up.
Yeah. And me personally, I'm very competitive. So if I see my neighbor cutting his lawn and, doing some things to it to make his lawn look good, I'm out there like I need to do that too. What
Yeah.
did you put? True green? Okay, let me figure this out. Because like again, I don't want that curb appeal means something to me, right? So I don't want to have somebody look at my house and look at my neighbor's house and be like, "Oh, his house is way better than his." Like, in a sense, I mean, that's my competitive nature, and that's me wanting to, make my house look as good as it can be. But things like that matter. So when we do decide to sell, or when we have people coming to look at our house, that first impression is going to be one of good, because they're going to say, "Okay, I can see myself living here. I can see myself being in this environment," right?
Correct. And you know what's funny? When you don't have good curb appeal, let's say, the exterior of your house, it looks like a rundown house. You'll start getting knocks on your door from a couple of different directions. Number one, the city's going to knock on your door, the county,
Yeah.
asking you to take care of this, otherwise you're going to get fined. And then investors are going to start knocking on your door.
Yeah.
Because they think you have a rundown house.
Yeah. Or people that are trying to come in and say, "Hey, do you need a new roof? Do you need?"
So those are the kinds of people that are going to start calling you if you don't set for good curb appeal.
Yep. So we have curb appeal. Now let's say when a seller is kind of thinking about options of how to put their house on the market. They figured out how to put their house on the market. They found a buyer. The buyer is wanting to do seller financing. Could we touch a little bit on that? Like, first of all, what's seller financing for those that don't know, right?
So seller financing, let's say you want to sell your house, right? You put your house on the market, whether it's for sale by owner or you get a realtor, and I'm interested in buying your house, Abel, right? I don't want to get banks involved. I just want to put down 10, 20%, whatever the amount is. I give you that money straight up. I give you, let's say that your house is worth $100,000, right? And I want to buy your house for $100,000. I'm going to give you $20,000 in cash right now, so I owe you $80,000, right? And then over time, we come to an agreement. We create a note saying I want to pay you X amount over 20 years or 30 years or 10 years, just like a bank would. And then we have that note, and then we record it to the county. And then over time, I have to pay you the remaining balance of $80,000 in this example.
Yeah.
If I do not pay you, then the funny part is you take the house back and you keep the down payment.
Keep them down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And on top of that, you can set your own interest rates. You can
Correct.
you can go low interest rate, high interest rate. It's because it's what's going to make sense for the buyer and for yourself, right?
Correct.
So this can be something that's a great option for someone that's like, I still want to get some residual income for the next 10 years, right? So that you get one big upfront payment. Then every month it's like you're getting money. Now you're no longer living in that house, and eventually you still have the deed to that house, because if they go in default, then that house gets back to you.
Exactly.
But you have monthly payments coming in with interest each month. So it's kind of like rent to own in a sense, right?
It's rent to own in a sense. Think of it this way. Have you ever heard of whenever you lease a car, and then after you made all those payments on the lease to the car, then if you want to buy the car, you technically made a few payments toward ownership of the car.
Yeah.
Same sense.
Same kind of concept. It's
Yeah.
like, do you want to go do this? That can be a great option for someone that's can't necessarily get financing from a big bank or from a small lender. So
Correct.
they let's say you and I have a relationship, and you go ahead and tell me, you know what, Abel, I know you're working on your credit. Even though my credit's top tier, I know you're working on your credit. I know you have some money saved up and you want to buy this house. Why don't you give me a 20% down payment and pay me each month to eventually own this house once you have paid it off? Now, that's great for you and I to have that agreement, but I always also advise the buyer and the seller to get a lawyer to draft up the contract, to get everything in writing and have a clear understanding, because you don't want any confusion at the end, right? So this is where things can get muddy and messy.
Well, that's why they have us, realtors.
Exactly.
So we don't have any of that, you know?
That's true too.
And whenever sellers want to sell their house, you have to make sure you go through the due diligence. And one of the most important factors of selling your property is setting the right price. Sellers, as I mentioned earlier, they go all the time to online websites like Realtor.com, Zillow, and they automatically think that's the right price.
Yeah.
And then we also have baby boomers, as I touched on earlier. They just think, oh, my house is worth this much because I don't have a loan balance. That's not true. If you talk to a realtor, then they can tell you what the true market value is of your house. It does depend on the current conditions, but we can really help you set the true price of your current property.
Because some people on that aspect, they get emotional and they'll be like, no, my house is worth more than that. I want to overprice. Like they'll go ahead and overprice their house. Not saying they want to overprice, but they feel like my house is worth $1 million, when in reality it's only worth $800,000 now. So now they have their emotion involved in it. I guess that's where we come in a sense, to kind of scale back and bring them back to reality, because at the end of the day, like we always talk about, it's always best to underprice your home and get competition and have a lot of people come and make a bid on it than overpricing and then just taking potential buyers out of the market because they feel like $1 million is a lot compared to, oh, I can do 800,000 but $1 million. So if the house is worth 800,000, you go ahead and list it for 775, and then maybe you can get 850 for it because you have people competing to buy your home.
Let me bring up a great example. Recently, I had a seller in Sterling, right? I think you went to one of the open houses for that.
Yeah.
And I told him his house isn't worth more than 625, 630.
Yeah.
But he wanted to list it at 650.
Yeah.
It just sat on the market for like half a year.
Yeah.
And even though he didn't have a loan on the property, he was still paying taxes and HOA on it. And if he listed it at 625 or even 620, as I advised him, what would have happened is buyers would have lined up, and then it would have became a competition, you know, like an auction. And then it would have built up to the 650 ideal price that he wanted.
Yeah.
But instead of taking my advice, he listed it at 650, and then it just sat on the market for half a year.
But if I'm not mistaken, with that one, he still got it for that price, though, right? It just took longer for him to get it off.
But tell me something, with the taxes and HOA fees,
kind of offset.
It kind of offset, and then it went back to the 625, 630.
Yeah.
It offset that. But if he listed it at 625 or 630, I honestly believe it would have built up to the 650.
Build up to that.
It's better to list your house for a slightly lower price and set lower expectations, and then hopefully you get a higher price.
Yeah, because you don't have to accept that lower. You
don't
amount.
have to. Yeah, you can just say no.
At the end of the day, you can. It's still your choice.
Yeah.
But how human psyche work is, if another person is also interested in that house and you have 2-3 different offers, you're more inclined to be like, okay, you know what? I'll go 10 over. I'll go 15 over. We really, really want this house. We'll go 20 over. Correct. So you create a sense of urgency for somebody to eventually pay more than what they were willing to pay in the beginning because they didn't want to miss out on that house.
Exactly. And another thing for sellers to be aware of, one of the key metrics is something known as DOM, days on market. So setting the price is key, because buyers, when they look at that, they look at how long has this property been on the market? How many days has it been on Zillow, on Realtor.com? So let's say you set the price, right? And you set it, let's go back to that example, 650, right? Once it hit the market for about a month, then we started getting all these lowball offers, because psychologically, everyone thinks something is wrong with the house.
Yeah.
Whether they visited the house or not, they just think, okay, the HVAC is old, the roof is coming apart, something is wrong with this house. Otherwise, it already would have went under contract, right?
Yeah.
But if you get it under contract within the first weekend or the first 10 days, then you're good. But if it just sits there for about a month, all the buyers are going to try to leverage you.
Yeah.
That's how the market works.
And this goes back to my point of why I like to advise my clients to get an appraisal, because that gets you back to reality, right? Yep. You may think that your house is worth $1 million, but it just got appraised for 800. So what do you want to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's always kind of like, I'd rather have the professional, the person that's going to do this, tell you what it is. And I can give you my opinion, and you might not take my opinion because you're emotionally involved in it. But if you go ahead and get it appraised, now you already know what it's worth, and then you can start planning accordingly. Even if it's worth 800, if you list it at 775, you might end up getting 850, 900 over it because somebody really wants your house.
Exactly.
Instead of you going into it and saying, "No, man, I put so much into it. I want $1 million for this house, and that's where I want it at."
And the other key part is when you list it lower and you get multiple offers, that's where, as a listing agent and the sellers, we represent the sellers, we can leverage those buyers to waive the appraisal contingency, waive other contingencies, the home inspection contingency, the financing contingency.
Exactly.
But when it starts sitting on the market for, days to weeks to months, we lose all that leverage.
Yeah.
Then the buyers have the leverage, right? They can use those contingencies against us representing the sellers.
Yeah.
So after the home inspection, they can come back and say, "Oh, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong." And more times than not, buyers and their agents, they just use that home inspection contingency to leverage the price back down.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit here as far as for the seller and what makes more sense for them, right? So typically you have two different type of buyers. You have somebody that's going to come into you that's going to say, "I'll pay completely cash for this." And then you're going to have somebody that needs to finance it. How does a seller make that distinction? So a lot of people automatically say, "The cash deal, let's do it. That's what I want to do." On the seller end, it doesn't matter if it's cash or finance. You're going to get that same amount each time. It's just probably simpler to go with the cash deal because there isn't a lot of layers to go through it, right? So how do you navigate with a seller on that? If they come to you and say, you tell them there's a cash offer and then there's somebody that's willing to put 20 down, but they're financing it.
That's a great question. Years ago, I would have always told the seller, "Hey, go with the cash. You don't have to deal with an appraisal. You don't have to deal with anyone that may get declined for the loan." But recently, times have changed a little bit. These days, a lot of times, cash buyers, they'll come in and they won't have any contingencies, right? And they'll act like that they're going to buy with cash. But then a few days into the deal, they'll go ahead and get it financed. They're only acting like they're going to come in with cash to get it under contract, and then they'll finance it. And you'll get shocked. This has happened so often where you get a knock on your door with the appraisal.
Yeah.
And the cash buyer will still, cover the shortage of the appraisal. But let me give you an example. Let's say you're selling your house for $600,000, right? And then you have several offers. The highest offer is at $650 through financing, but there's a cash offer for $625. What would you take in that case?
I mean, me personally, it doesn't matter for me. So I'm going to take the higher amount because either way, at the end of the day, I'm going to get the money, right?
Correct.
But for some people, it's again a psychological thing, right? Oh, this person has cash. He's going to pay everything. We're going to be good at $625. I'm going to go with that. But that might not be the best option because, like you said, they might come back and get it financed.
Exactly.
They also might use that as leverage. So they might have came in at cash at $625. But then now they do a home inspection, they do all this, and they're like, "Well, I have to do this, that, and that. I'm only going to pay you $575." Versus somebody that would have came in at $650 financed, they'll get it appraised, and maybe it appraises for that amount, but you're going to get that. That's what you're going to get. It's a little bit longer of a process, but I always feel like it's case by case, right?
We're a highly leveraged country, Abel. No one wants to lock all their money into a property. So if you had that much in cash, why would you take all of it and put it in a property? It's just that simple, right? Even if it's a flip, investors don't do that.
Yeah.
This is just a tactic agents and their investors use to get the property. Now, I'll say this. If the buyer is putting 0% down, then that's a different story because their chances of getting declined are higher.
Yeah. Unless they're in the military, which or there's a certain program where you pay 0 down.
Correct. Then you have to do your due diligence. You have to look at each offer, make sure they're qualified and their loan is going to be declined.
One of the things I always look at is also an offer is an offer. No matter what, we're obligated to present those offers to you.
Correct.
For the buyers, the people that are buying a home, don't hesitate to make an offer. An offer is an offer, whether it's $500,000 and the house is worth, or they feel like it's worth $600,000. An offer is an offer. You don't know what's on the other end. You don't know if this seller is got millions of other offers or only has no offers.
An offer is an offer. And that's a great point, because I tell a lot of buyers, all my buyers, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
It's a Michael Jordan saying.
Yeah.
Jordan kept trying. And a lot of buyers, they're very reluctant. And they're hesitant. They're thinking, oh, we're not going to get this house. Why don't you try? Just try. An offer is an offer, like you said.
The worst that can happen is
they say no. Yeah.
And then you move on to the next
one. And guess what?
Best case scenario, they say yes.
They say yes.
You're under contract.
And it's a learning experience for everyone. And even though I tell my buyers that I represent, hey, read the contract, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But at the very least, you can learn a lot in the process.
And this one's more geared towards the agents that are listening. You may go and call the other agent, and he may tell you, you may tell him like, "Hey, my client's willing to offer $500,000," and the agent will come back and say, "Yeah, don't even bother because he's not going to entertain that." Don't listen to that.
Yeah, they do it anyway.
Because the agent on the other end, you got to know, is going to tell you what's going to make him the most amount of money, right?
Correct.
He's not going to want something that is less than what they're asking for, but his client might accept that.
Exactly.
He has to present that. So don't ever feel pressured as an agent to say, oh, I'm not going to present this because they're not going to accept it. If your client is willing to do that, go ahead and present that. Let the seller say no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the seller says no, the sellers, they always change their mind. Sometimes sellers, they become very desperate for cash.
Or they're distressed. Like you said, they have to make a move. They're moving to another state. They're moving to another country. They're willing to take a $25,000-$30,000 loss if they have enough equity in it just to get the process going or get it done. You don't know what the position is on the other side, right?
One time I had a buyer, and they wanted a property, but they didn't think it would drop in price. A couple of weeks later, we saw it drop by $50,000.
Yeah.
So you just never know, and it's what we said earlier. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And buyers, they just think that, oh, it's not possible. But they just don't try.
You have to try.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit of understanding the CMA. So that's the competitive market analysis.
Comparable market analysis.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
So the comparable market analysis is another name for the broker's price opinion. Mm-hmm. What we do is we look at a specific property. Let's say you want to sell your house, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say it's a townhouse, a 3-level townhouse with 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and a walkout basement. And let's say it's located in Springfield, right here in this area, right? Mm-hmm. Then I would look within a half-mile range of similar properties that sold within the last 90 days. And then I would do additions and subtractions of the comparable properties based on the number of bedrooms, the kitchen size, and the types of additions that the comparables had. For example, let's say one of the comps had a deck and your property doesn't have a deck. I would go ahead and take $15,000 out of your property. Mm-hmm. And then let's say one of the comparables doesn't have a walkout basement. That's huge for your property. Mm-hmm. But this is pretty much how we come up with the numbers in the comparable market analysis.
And just kind of looking at how things add up in the sense around your area so that you know what your house can potentially be. This is just another tool that we present to our clients to be able to make an informed decision on what they want to do.
Exactly.
So that's the CMA. I call it competitive. You said comparable, same tomato to me, but it's comparable market analysis.
Correct, because it's always comps, right? Mm-hmm. You always want to look at comps to your property. You can't compare a single-family house to a townhouse or a townhouse to a condo.
Exactly.
You have to look at the same thing. And this happens a lot. People ask, oh, why does this townhouse have condo fees? That's a great question. Mm-hmm. It always depends on when the house was first built, when those fees were assigned. Mm-hmm. But you can't compare a townhouse with condo fees to a townhouse with just low HOA fees.
Exactly.
So you always have to compare similar houses to the same neighborhood with similar fees, similar tax structure, just comparable. That's why we call it comparable market analysis.
Also, you don't want so you don't want your client to come and say, yeah, we're looking at this house in Springfield, but this house in Baltimore got all this, and this is how much it's worth. It's not going to make sense because it's two different areas, two different markets.
Correct.
Prices are going to vary depending on everything. One of the best things that we've learned, right, is always location, location, location.
Exactly.
So, yeah, you can tell me that this house in Nebraska is got 5 bedrooms and a 4-bathroom, and you got it for $100,000. You're not going to get that house in Springfield, Virginia for that same price. It's just the location matters as well.
And this is what appraisers look at, actually. They want to make sure there's something in the nearby area and everything is similar.
Yeah.
Now it becomes more complicated when you go to rural areas, and we're not even going to cover that. But, rural areas, it becomes a lot more complicated because you got houses with like 5 acres.
Yeah, and land and a lot of other things. So lastly, what I wanted to touch on is for our sellers that are out there that are thinking about selling, when do you think is the best time to start, A, preparing your house to get on the market, and then B, when to actually list it on the market, right?
For sellers to maximize the value, the best time of year to sell your house for sellers is between the months of February to August. Mm-hmm. February is when all the buyers start filing their taxes. By filing your taxes, a buyer gets a huge down payment. Mm-hmm. And then it just continues on. The season gets better. Everyone starts coming out of the cave, right? Well, the buyers start coming out. And then we start approaching the end of the school season. Mm-hmm. Everyone is graduating. And then a lot of parents want to shift schools. A lot of schools with higher ratings tend to have higher property values. Mm-hmm. So let's say, your son or daughter is 3 years old and you want them to go to the top schools next year. You're going to be wanting to upgrade from your apartment to a nice townhouse or single-family house, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of parents do that during the summer to make sure their kid will go to the best school. That's what typically happens during the summer. And then slowly, as we head into the fall, it starts slowing down. And the time of year we're in now, Thanksgiving season, mm-hmm. This is when everyone starts going into the hibernation mode.
Yeah. So I approach things a little bit, not so much differently. I do understand February through August is the best time to list your home, essentially. Mm-hmm. What I like to do is I like to find those clients that want to list their home in February and August throughout that time, now, around this time, right? So then now I can start meeting with them. I can start telling them some of the things that they need to do as far as, hey, let's, get this house painted. Let's do this, let's do that, so that when February comes along, we can start putting it on the market right away.
Agreed.
Right? And it's ready to go versus starting to think about it in February, and then now you have to paint it February, March, April, then now you're listing it in June. Like, no, let's start preparing now, November, December, January. And maybe in January put a coming soon just to see what kind of interest that we get in it. Because even though it's not a good time to buy at this time, or you may feel it's not a good time to buy, or it's not the best time to buy, you're going to get a gauge of the type of interest that people are going to show by putting it on the market. You don't have to necessarily say it's on the market now. You can just put coming soon and start to see what kind of traction you get.
I agree. Right now is the best time to get started. By calling a realtor, by mm-hmm. calling us, we'll set up an appointment. And then by setting up the appointment, we'll come and visit you, have a sit down, and then we'll go through the property. We'll inspect a few things, even though we're not licensed inspectors. Mm-hmm. We'll take a look at the HVAC. We'll take a look at the water heater. We'll go through the attic. Maybe it's missing insulation. We'll go through the exterior. We'll go through and take a look if it has good curb appeal or not. Mm-hmm. And we'll find all of that out for you.
And that circles it back to our first finding the right agent, right? You want an agent that's going to be able to do these things for you. So when they come into the house to do the initial meeting with you, or initial first couple meetings, if they sit there at your kitchen table and then talk to you for 30 minutes on how they're able to get your house sold and do all that and then leave, that's not the type of agent that you want. The agent to come in there, hey, show me around the house. Before you even sit down and talk to them, show me around the house. Let me see the house. Let's see some things. Let them get familiar with the house.
That's right? A great point, Abel. If you have an agent, and we're talking about listing agent representing sellers right now. Mm-hmm. if you have an agent, whether it's a buyer agent or an agent representing the seller, the listing agent, they just come in, sit down for 30 minutes, and just bring a broker agreement, and they don't care about the property itself, then that's not the right agent. You want an agent, like you said, it's not about the agreement. It's about doing what's best for you, going around the house, going for what's your best interest, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's the right type of agent. And I've noticed that sometimes. I've had clients tell me bad stories where there are agents that just have them sign the dotted line, and then believe it or not,
take some pictures, and post it, and sit back and and you know what? Honestly, that might work, right? For some agents, because it's all about the volume.
Correct.
But it's not going to work in the sense of doing the best service for your client.
Correct.
Right? You want to be able to point out some things that, hey, let's think about doing this before we put this on the market. Because if someone just comes in, takes pictures, gets that agreement from you, and is now marketing your home, they're not doing nothing else. But if someone comes in and actually walks your home, looks at certain things, gives you advice on, hey, maybe you should do this, talks to you about staging it, talks to you about paint jobs, updating your kitchen, and really seeing like, hey, how much equity do you have on this house? What are you willing to do now to maximize that equity before we put it on the market? And really sits down and just kind of gives you the best service that they're able to give you, and sets up home open houses and just little things that are going to enhance, talks to you about curb appeal, talks to you about, hey, your basement has a little smell. Have you gotten that checked out? Have you thought about getting an appraisal? Have you thought about getting a home inspection? You can do all of this. And guess what? Like how we talked about February through August is the best time. January, December, November, this time, you're going to get better deals for home inspections because they're not as busy.
That's true.
You give it up. So and if you go and get a home inspection in February, March, April, and they're flooded with business, their price is their price. But if you come to them on December 21st, 3 days before Christmas, and they haven't had a home inspection done all of the month of December, guess what? They're more likely to give you a discount in that time.
That's true. And when you're talking to agents, whether you're the seller or the buyer, it's not just about the property. If they develop a good relationship with you, because realtors and agents, we're selling ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not selling you the house because we don't own the property. It's a service-based business. So it's not just about the property. It's about you. So if they develop a good relationship with you, if they actually care about you, then that makes a difference.
Yeah.
If they get to know you, develop a relationship, small talk, if you have interest in sports, if you have interest in other things, then that's what matters. If something just happened in your family, then they build rapport with you. That's what goes a long way. But as you touched on earlier, if the agent just comes there with paperwork and then they just take pictures and they're out in 20 minutes, that's not the right type of agent you want to sign up with.
Exactly. And on top of that, it's like I said, you're selling the experience. You're selling yourself in the sense of, am I going to make this transaction as smooth and as simple and as less of a headache for my client? Because when you do that, and this is geared more towards agents that are listening, when you do that, look how much referrals you get. Look how much your business starts to build. Now, if you give somebody a horrible experience, guess what? They're going to tell that experience to the next guy. Yep. And that's just going to kill your business. So it's little things that agents can do, and it's little things that sellers and buyers can look at when they're looking for the right agent to have.
Exactly.
And these go a long way. And shameless plug, H2IL Properties is probably the best in the industry when it comes to this.
100%. We're the top brokerage in the DMV and soon to be nationwide, man.
Yeah. And with that said, we're going to end this podcast here. We do appreciate you guys for following us. This is episode 13. We've grown, as you guys can see, and things are changing here for us. Just keep listening. Keep hitting us up for advice. Send us an email if you have any questions. Hit us in the comment section. Go ahead and hit that subscribe and follow buttons.
And the share. Share it as much as you can.
And we'll keep on giving you this information. I'm Abel.
I'm Burhan.
And we'll see you guys next week.